Okay, so we're continuing. Sorry, getting cut off. This is ancient Greece. So we're continuing with the science and technology section. It says the perils of thought. Curiosity and imagination could sometimes be dangerous in Greek society. The famous philosopher Socrates said that the wisest man was the one who knew that he knew nothing. But when he tried to convince his fellow Athenians that they too knew nothing, it proved too much for them. He was condemned to death for insulting the gods and corrupting the young, and died after drinking the cup of hemlock or juice extracted from a poisonous plant given to him as punishment. So Socrates said that the wisest man was the one who knew that he knew nothing. So, putting science to use, although they made important contributions to the development of scientific knowledge, the Greeks did not show much interest in technology, putting that knowledge to practical use. For much of their history, they survived without such basic devices as the windmill. They did want to show that science should be taken seriously, however. But Thales of Miletus put his knowledge of weather patterns to practical effect, foreseeing a spell of favorable weather and judging that the olive crop would be very good as a result. He bought as many olive presses as he could and earned himself a handsome profit. Okay, so sports and games. Exercising the body was just as important to the Greeks as exercising the mind. A good citizen began to take part in sports and games during youth. And was expected to continue as long as he was physically able. A women's game. Women and girls, on the other hand, did not really have a chance to join sports. In Athens, the only game we knew for girls played together was knucklebone. The game became known as a women's game, but games of chance were clearly enjoyed by everyone. This life-size figure of a charioteer originally stood on a chariot drawn by horses. In fact, we can still see makeshift game boards stretched on the marble seats of ancient Greek theaters. People must have enjoyed playing board games as they waited for the action to start. Hockey seemed to have been played only by boys. Generally, though, team games were not popular. The Greeks mainly used sports to encourage the individual to excel, particularly in athletic events. Running, probably the most popular sport of all, was running. The Greeks raced against each other on sand to make it more difficult. As in modern athletics, there were different lengths of race. Simple. The length of a stadium, about 200 yards, or double 2 lengths, and the long race, sometimes as many as 24 stadia, which is 4,800 yards. There was one race that was run in armor. The basic purpose of all this exercise, after all, was to keep men fit to serve in the army. Especially long marathon, a popular event today, was one race which was not run by the Greeks. It takes its name from the famous run to bring news of victory at the Battle of Marathon to Athens, 26 miles away. So they don't run marathons, okay? Wrestling and boxing. The Greeks thought highly of skill at wrestling because the sport required a combination of strength, suppleness, and presence of mind. Wrestling contests took place in mud and dust. The dust made it easier to get a hold on one's opponent, and the mud made it harder. To win, a man had to get his opponent down on his back so that his shoulders touched the ground 3 times. In boxing, each athlete's head was protected by a bronze cap. This was very necessary since contestants' fists were armed with leather thongs studded with metal. The results of these contests were often bloody. Worse still was the pancration, a combination of wrestling and boxing in which a man was allowed to seize and hit his opponent and even strangle him, although biting was ruled out. The pentathlon. Contestants in the pentathlon had to take part in 5 different events. In addition to running and wrestling, there was long jump, the discus throw, and the javelin throw. There was no high jump contest in ancient Greek games. Okay, just long jump, discus throw, and javelin throw, and running and wrestling. It is not clear what technique was used in the long jump. The distances recorded are quite large, so it may have been more like a hop, step, and jump, like today's triple jump, than modern long jump. Long jump contestants also carried stone or metal weights. These were probably swung forward as the athletes jumped to help increase their movement forward. No one is really sure how the pentathlon was judged, but it seems likely that only the winners of the long jump, discus, and javelin events qualified to compete in the running and wrestling. Animal sports. The Greeks saw nothing wrong in using animals for sports. Cocks, quails, and partridges were all used for fighting. Bets were placed on the results of the fights. The main animal sport popular with everyone, although only the rich could afford to take part, was chariot racing. The prize in these events went to the owner of the horse, not to the charioteer, and this gave a rare chance for women to take part. Cynista, sister of a Spartan king, was the first woman owner to race horses at Olympia. Every 4 years, all fighting stopped while the Olympic Games were held. The games which were dedicated to Zeus included chariot racing, running, boxing, wrestling. Each winner received a simple laurel wreath. Is that Zeus? Religious festivals. Because physical training was so important, and many festivals held to worship the Greek gods and goddesses always featured various athletic events, as well as processions and rites and rituals in their festivals. Olympia. Some religious festivals consisted almost exclusively of athletic events. The famous competitive games held every 4 years at Olympia were dedicated to the god Zeus. These were Panhellenic games, which meant that all Greeks were allowed to take part. For the occasion, heralds were sent to proclaim a truce throughout the Greek world, and all fighting stopped. Part of the Pantheon frieze showed the Panathenaic festival held every 4 years. This heifer is about to be sacrificed to the goddess. Spartans in padded costumes dancing around the wine jar, probably as part of a ceremony connected with the worship of Dionysus, god of wine. Winning or taking part. Local city festivals often had a sporting element too. In Athens, for example, at the Panathenaic festival in honor of the goddess Athena, many kinds of races took place in the agora, including a particularly dangerous one that required jumping on and off a moving chariot. The prizes for winning here were specially commissioned vases of Athenian pottery filled with olive oil from Attica. This was a good way of advertising the city's products. Nothing, however, was compared with the glory of winning at Olympia, where the prize was simply a wreath of olive leaves. Processions. The centerpiece of the Panathenea was the procession, an important part in most Greek festivals. Like any state procession, it required a lot of organization. Everyone had to be in the right order, wearing the correct robes, and carrying the appropriate vessels and baskets. Singers and musicians were also essential. Processions like these were the best chance women had to appear in public life. The great sight at the Panathenaic procession was the new robe for the statue of Athena, which was carried like a flag attached to the mast of a ship. The women who had woven this vast robe played an important part in the procession. The double pipes, or alua, were often played in festivals. The pipes were fitted with reeds, with like a modern oboe, and were held in the mouth by leather strap. So, that's it. Alua. We're gonna pause, I think, here. Or should we? Okay, let's just see if we can continue. The theater. Going to the theater and going to church are today seen as very different activities, but staging plays was one of the ways that the Greeks honored their gods. Dionysus was the god of the theater and the god of wine, since both were seen as ways of transporting people beyond their everyday experience. A terracotta model of a comic actor playing the part of a slave. He wears a mask of stiffened linen. Song and dance. Drama developed from the songs and dances which were performed during the worship of Dionysus. Plays took place on a circle of flat ground called the orchestra, which means the dancing place in Greek. Originally, this was probably the area set aside for threshing corn in Greek villages. A chorus of singers and dancers played an important part in any Greek play. Gradually, though, their leader separated himself from them and made spoken comments. This was the beginning of acting. But there were no more than 3 actors, and the songs and dances were often took place between each scene. A visit to the theater in ancient Greece would be more like going to the opera today. Greek actors in the play. The 2 on the right, who are joined together by a cloak, are playing the part of a centaur called Chiron. Playwrights and prizes. Plays like sports and games were often put on competitively. Competitions in Athens sometimes went on for days.